I found out my dock was being cut apart while I was still at work, and by the time I got home, half of it was already sinking into the lake like it had just given up on me. No warning, no court order, no conversation, just a crew with power tools tearing into something I had built, maintained, and paid taxes on for over a decade. And the worst part wasn't even the damage. It was who sent them. Her name was Karen Whitmore. And if you've ever lived in a planned community, you already know the type. Not loud, not reckless. No, she was worse. Calm, calculated, always smiling like she knew something you didn't. She had just taken over as head of the Architectural Review Committee for our HOA in a place called Lake Briarwood, a quiet stretch of waterfront homes about an hour outside of Charlotte. Most people move there for the same reason I did. You get a little slice of lake life without dealing with tourists, noise, or chaos. It was supposed to be peaceful. I bought my place back in 2012. Small house, nothing fancy, but it came with a narrow strip of shoreline and enough space to build a dock. Took me about 6 months to get everything approved through the county and another couple months to actually build it out with a licensed contractor. It wasn't extravagant, just a solid wooden dock with 2 slips and a seating area at the end where I'd sit most evenings with a beer and watch the water settle down at sunset. Over the years, it became my routine, my reset button after long days. And for 11 years, nobody had a problem with it. Not the county inspectors, not my neighbors, not even the HOA. It was documented, permitted, inspected twice, and signed off. I kept every piece of paperwork in a folder in my office like most homeowners do, hoping I'd never need it again. Then Karen showed up. She moved in 2 houses down sometime in early spring. Brand new place, freshly renovated, everything looked like it came out of a magazine. Within a month, she was attending every HOA meeting, asking questions nobody else cared about, pushing for revisions to community standards. At first, people appreciated it, said she was organized, proactive. I didn't think much of it. I work long hours, I keep to myself, and as long as nobody messes with my property, we're good. That lasted about 3 weeks. One afternoon, I got a certified letter in the mail, thick envelope, HOA letterhead, my name typed clean across the front. I remember opening it at the kitchen counter, still in my work boots, thinking it was probably some notice about landscaping or dues. It wasn't. It was a violation notice, claiming that my dock extended 2 feet beyond the approved community waterline boundary. 2 feet. Not 10, not 22. According to the letter, I had 30 days to bring the structure into compliance or face further action. I actually laughed when I read it. Not because it was funny, but because it didn't make any sense. My dock hadn't moved. The lake hadn't moved. And the idea that it suddenly became a problem after 11 years felt personal. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I pulled out my original permit documents from the county, laid them out on the table, and compared them with the community plat map included in the notice. Took me about 20 minutes to see what was going on. The dock was exactly where it was supposed to be. Not close. Not within margin. Exactly. The coordinates matched, the dimensions matched, even the inspection stamps lined up perfectly with what had been approved back in 2012. If anything, the HOA's map looked outdated, like it hadn't been revised in years. So I put together a response. Kept it professional, attached copies of the permit, inspection reports, and a side-by-side comparison with their own map. I sent it certified, addressed directly to Karen, and asked her to review the documents before taking any further action. 3 days later, she replied. Short letter. No greeting, no acknowledgement of the documents I sent. Just a statement that HOA standards supersede county permits, and that I still had 30 days to correct the violation. I remember sitting there reading it twice, then a third time, just trying to figure out if I was missing something, because that's not how jurisdiction works. An HOA can enforce aesthetics, sure, paint colors, fence styles, things like that, but they don't get to override county-approved structures that are already built and inspected. At that point, I could have argued, could have gone back and forth, maybe even tried to reason with her. But something about the way she wrote that letter, it told me this wasn't about the dock. It was about control. So instead of responding, I made a different call. I reached out to a real estate attorney named Daniel Harper. Guy had handled a boundary dispute for a co-worker of mine a few years back. Straight shooter, didn't waste time. I sent him everything, the notice, my documents, Karen's response, and asked him one simple question. Am I missing something here? He called me the next morning, and the first thing he said was, "No, but they might be." We agreed to sit tight for a bit, let things play out, see if the HOA escalated or backed off once they realized I wasn't folding. For about 2 weeks, nothing happened. No follow-up letters, no fines, no emails. Just silence. And honestly, I started to think maybe it was over. Maybe Karen reviewed the documents again, realized she overstepped, and decided to move on to something else. Then I came home early one Thursday afternoon. And that's when I saw the truck parked in my driveway. The truck didn't belong there. White pickup, no company logo, just a ladder rack and a couple of toolboxes rattling in the back like it had been driven hard for years. I remember slowing down as I pulled into the driveway, engine still running, just staring at it for a second like my brain needed time to catch up, because something already felt off. Then I heard the sound, that sharp, grinding whine of a circular saw cutting through wood, echoing off the water, and my stomach just dropped. I didn't even shut the truck off right away. I just stepped out and started walking toward the shoreline, faster with every step, and the closer I got, the clearer it became. 2 guys were out on my dock, not inspecting it, not measuring it, cutting it. One of the main support posts had already been severed clean through, and the far end of the dock was dipping slightly into the water like it was trying to breathe. "Hey," I shouted before I even hit the grass, voice cracking louder than I expected. "What the hell are you doing?" They both looked up, surprised, but not panicked. One of them, older guy with a gray beard and sunburned neck, killed the saw and stepped back like he'd been expecting this moment all day. "Work order," he said, casual as anything. "We're just doing what we were hired to do." "Hired by who?" I asked, already knowing the answer but needing to hear it anyway. He shrugged, wiped his hands on his jeans, then reached into his back pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. "HOA. Lady named Karen signed off on it." Of course she did. I walked down onto the dock, every step feeling unstable now that one of the supports was gone, and looked at the cut. Clean, deliberate, not an accident. They weren't adjusting anything. They were dismantling it. "You need to stop. Right now," I said, trying to keep my voice level. "This is private property. You don't have permission to be here." The younger guy shifted uncomfortably, glanced at the older one. "Man, we've got a contract. I don't care what you've got." I snapped, then caught myself, took a breath. "Look, I'm not trying to make this a problem for you, but this job is illegal. There's no court order, no notice, nothing. If you keep going, you're going to be part of that." The older guy studied me for a second, not hostile, just weighing his options. Then he looked back at the dock, at the cut he'd already made, and I could see the moment it clicked for him. This wasn't routine. "You got paperwork?" he asked. "I've got more paperwork than whoever sent you," I said, pulling my phone out and scrolling through photos of the permit, the inspection stamps, everything I had already sent to the HOA. He didn't even need to read all of it. He just nodded slowly, then turned to his partner. "Pack it up." Just like that. They didn't argue, didn't push back. They gathered their tools, coiled up the extension cord, and within 10 minutes they were gone, leaving behind a half-cut dock sagging into the water like a broken limb. I stood there for a while after they left, just looking at it. 11 years of use, of memories, of quiet evenings, and now it looked like something abandoned. That's when I made the second call. Daniel picked up on the first ring. "I'm guessing something happened," he said. "Yeah," I replied, staring out at the water. "They tried to take my dock apart." There was a pause, not long, but enough to shift the tone. "Are you serious?" "Cut one of the main supports." I stopped them before they finished, but the damage is done. Another pause, then I heard it. Papers shuffling, keyboard clicking. "Okay," he said, voice sharper now. "Don't touch anything. Take photos from every angle, document everything, and I mean everything. I'm filing for an emergency injunction first thing in the morning." "First thing?" I asked. "No," he corrected. "Now? I'm starting it now." That night was restless. I kept replaying it in my head. The sound of the saw, the way the dock dipped after the cut, the fact that someone thought they could just walk onto my property and start dismantling something legally built without so much as knocking on my door. But underneath all that anger, there was something else. Curiosity. Because Karen didn't strike me as reckless. Controlling, yes. Arrogant, definitely. But not careless. People like her usually make sure they're protected before they make a move like that. So the question kept circling in my head. What made her think she could get away with it? The next morning, Daniel filed the injunction and sent a formal notice to the HOA demanding an immediate halt to any further action, along with a request for all documentation they used to justify the work order. Then he did something I didn't expect. He started digging, not just into my case, but into the HOA itself, their authority, their permits, their control over the waterfront. Lake Briarwood wasn't just private homes. It had a shared marina at the south end of the community. Boat slips, a small fueling dock, even a maintenance shed that the board members used during the summer. It was one of the selling points when I bought the place. Community-managed marina access, they called it. I never used it much, preferred my own dock, but it was there. And it turned out, that's where things got interesting. 2 days later, Daniel called me back. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "Try me. You know how they claimed your dock is outside the approved waterline boundary?" "Yeah. Well, their marina is too." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it felt unreal. "What do you mean?" "I mean their entire marina operation is based on a state waterway permit that references a boundary survey from 1989. 1989. The shorelines shifted since then. Erosion, water level changes, all of it. According to the current survey, parts of their marina extend beyond the permitted area." I leaned back in my chair, trying to process that. "How far?" "Far enough that it's not a technicality," he said. "We're talking multiple structures, slips, possibly the fuel dock." "So they're in violation?" "Potentially, yes. And unlike your situation, theirs involves state-level permits." That's when it clicked. Karen wasn't just enforcing rules. She was trying to reshape the shoreline to match an outdated map. And in doing that, she didn't realize she was exposing something much bigger. "What happens if the state finds out?" I asked. Daniel didn't hesitate. "They investigate. And if they confirm it, they can suspend the permit." I looked out the window toward the lake, the damaged docks still visible in the distance. And for the first time since this started, I felt something shift. Not relief, not yet, but momentum. "Do it," I said quietly. There was a brief silence on the line. "Are you sure?" he asked. "Once we report this, it's not just about your dock anymore. This affects the entire community." I thought about that, about my neighbors, the marina, the people who had nothing to do with this. Then I thought about Karen, signing that work order, sending people onto my property like it was hers to manage. She made it about the whole community the moment she touched my dock. I said, "Do it." Daniel exhaled slowly. "All right." And just like that, the fight stopped being small. Once Daniel filed that report with the State Waterway Authority, things moved a lot faster than I expected. Not overnight, but fast enough that you could feel the pressure building week by week, like a storm you know is coming but can't quite see yet. At first, it was just quiet inquiries, letters sent to the HOA board requesting updated surveys, permit documentation, compliance records. Nothing dramatic. On the surface, everything looked routine. But underneath, people were starting to notice. I'd run into neighbors on my evening walks, and the conversations started shifting. At first it was small talk, weather, work, the usual. Then someone would lower their voice a little and ask, "Hey, you hear anything about the marina? Or is it true the state's looking into something?" And I'd just shrug, keep it vague. I wasn't interested in turning it into gossip. I just wanted it handled properly. Karen, on the other hand, she went quiet. No more emails, no more notices, no more appearances at the docks with a clipboard in hand. It was like she disappeared the moment things left her control. And honestly, that told me everything I needed to know. People like her, they're confident when they think they're right, but when the ground shifts under them, they don't stick around to explain. About 3 weeks in, I got a call from Daniel. "They've opened a formal investigation," he said. I stepped outside while we talked, pacing slowly along the edge of my yard, eyes drifting out toward the water where my dock still sat. Partially repaired now, temporary supports keeping it from sagging any further. "What does that actually mean?" I asked. "It means inspectors are coming out," he said. "They're going to remeasure boundaries, review the marina structures, compare everything against the current legal waterline. And if it doesn't line up with the permit, they have options." "Options like what?" "Suspension, fines, mandatory reconstruction. Worst case, full shutdown until it's compliant." I let that sink in, not just the impact on the HOA, but on everyone who used that marina. Families, retirees, people who'd been there longer than me. It wasn't nothing. Still, I didn't feel guilty. Because none of this started with me. The inspection happened about a week later. State vehicles parked near the marina, guys in polos and boots walking around with measuring equipment, marking points, taking photos. It wasn't loud, wasn't dramatic, but it was thorough, and you could feel the tension in the air, neighbors watching from a distance, whispering, trying to piece together what was going on. I stayed out of it, didn't go down there, didn't ask questions. I had already said what I needed to say. Then, about 6 weeks after that first report, everything hit at once. I got the call early in the morning, just as I was about to leave for work. "It's done," Daniel said. I leaned against the kitchen counter, already bracing for it. "What happened?" "They suspended the Marina permit." Just like that. No build-up, no drama. Just a sentence that carried a whole lot of weight. "For how long?" I asked. "Indefinite, pending full boundary review and structural reassessment." I closed my eyes for a second, exhaled slowly. "So it's shut down?" "Completely," he said. "All shared slips are locked. Fuel docks closed. Nobody's using anything until they sort it out." I nodded, even though he couldn't see me. "And the HOA? They're scrambling," he said. "Emergency meetings, legal consultations. They didn't expect this." Of course they didn't. Because they thought they were the authority, not realizing they were operating on borrowed time and outdated paperwork. I hung up the phone and stood there for a minute, just listening to the quiet in the house. And I wish I could say I felt triumphant, or vindicated, or anything like that. But honestly, what I felt was calm. Not because everything worked out perfectly, but because the truth had finally caught up to the situation. Later that week, the official notice went out to the community. Emails, printed letters, even a notice board posted near the marina entrance. It explained everything in formal language: permit suspension, ongoing review, restricted access. And just like that, the entire summer boating season was gone. People were upset. Some were confused, others were angry, and a lot of them didn't know where to point that anger. Some blamed the HOA, some blamed the state. A few even tried to connect it back to me. I didn't engage. Because the facts were simple. None of this would have happened if boundaries had been respected from the start. Karen resigned the same week the notice went out. No announcement, no explanation, just a brief line in an HOA email stating that she was stepping down from her position on the Architectural Review Committee. That was it. After everything. She just disappeared from the role she fought so hard to control. I saw her once after that, at a distance, walking to her car. She looked smaller, somehow. Not physically, but in presence. Like whatever confidence she carried before had been stripped away. We didn't speak. There wasn't anything left to say. As for my dock, the HOA's insurance carrier stepped in once the legal pressure settled. They covered the full restoration, not just repairs, but a complete rebuild of the damaged section by a licensed marine contractor. New supports, reinforced decking, everything brought up to current standards. It took a few weeks, but when it was done, it looked better than it ever had before. Stronger, cleaner, like the whole situation had been cut out and replaced with something solid. The first evening I walked out to the end of it again. I remember just standing there, looking out over the water, the sun dropping low, same as it always had. Same view, same quiet, but it felt different. Not because the place had changed, but because I had. I understood something I didn't fully grasp before, that sometimes people don't push boundaries because they're right. They push them because nobody's pushed back yet. And the moment someone does, things have a way of correcting themselves. Now here's the part one keep thinking about, and I'm curious what you'd do. If you had come home that day, saw someone standing on your property, cutting into something you built, something you legally own, would you have handled it the same way? Would you have stopped them calmly, called a lawyer, let the system play out? Or would you have handled it differently, right there in the moment? Because I'll be honest, there was a split second, standing on that dock, hearing that saw, seeing the damage, where I almost didn't choose the calm route. And I think a lot of people wouldn't have. So I'm genuinely asking, where's the line for you between protecting your property and losing your cool? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read every single one.